I became a teacher because I didn't like school. I didn't enjoy being in school, and I thought there must be a better way. We need an education system where children are not labelled and where teachers are not labelled. So I started my career working in a secondary school, tough secondary school, moved to another secondary school in the Midlands. And then when I stopped to have my own children, I also supported some individual children with profound special educational needs, and then moved into primary education. And what I began to realise very, very quickly is that children have the right to surprise us. Children have the right to enable us to believe that they can do amazing things. And too often, our education system unintentionally stops that happening. I was fortunate to be part of a research project called Learning Without Limits. That project recruited 9 teachers, both primary and secondary teachers, all of us, at the turn of the millennium, teachers who were challenging the notion that to label children, to look at children in terms of numbers and letters metaphorically slapped onto their forehead, was the right way to start thinking about education. We were all teachers who actually believed that so-called ability is not fixed, that it is the difference that we make in our classrooms and obviously what happens at home that makes a profound difference to what children can ultimately achieve. That Learning Without Limits project found that each of the 9 teachers, although we were working in very different circumstances, very different schools, both primary and secondary, we all had 3 core principles in common in our classrooms. We all trusted children, and we all ran classrooms where children could trust us. Trust is fundamental. We all believed in co-agency. If you have a sense of agency, you have a voice, you expect to be heard. It doesn't mean you're always right, but you know that your voice will be listened to. Co-agency, children and teachers and children working together, causes transformation. And inclusion, the third principle that we all had in common. We all knew that this was for everybody, not for the convenient majority. Following that research project, I took up my first headship. I recall going to look around my school. It was a school that had been in special measures for 3 years and had made no progress. I remember standing there and looking at the school and thinking, whatever I do, I can't make it any worse. This was a school where hope had been lost. The teachers were exhausted. The children didn't believe. It wasn't cool to try. The cool thing was to look like you weren't bothered, and effort was a dirty word. It was like, ugh, effort. It was all right if you presented as being naturally able to do something, but if it looked like you had to try hard, that wasn't cool at all. I knew I needed to bring the curriculum to life in this school. I needed to bring hope back to this school, and I needed to work with everybody to make this happen. Now, we didn't have any additional resources. Nobody said, here's a shed load of money, sort it out. So what I used to do at the weekend, with my husband John, we used to go to car boot sales to get resources, anything I could find that would bring the school to life, anything, including books, that we actually needed in the school. And on one particular occasion, on a Sunday, we went to a car boot sale, and there, on the ground, underneath the stall, was a cardboard box full of bottles. And the stallholder said, oh, yeah, I think they're Victorian. He said, I dug them up when we were building the Crooked Billet roundabout. He said, I've always meant to clean them up, never done anything with them. You can have them for a £5. And so we walked off with this cardboard box full of bottles, and they were full of mud. And over the top of them were cobwebs, and they were absolutely filthy. And on the Monday morning, I went into school, and I carried this box of bottles, and I put them down in the Year 2 classroom, where Jo, who's now our deputy head at my school, was teaching. And I knew she was teaching Victorians from the old QCA model of curriculum planning. And I said to her, Jo, have a look what we've got here. Look in this box. It was this filthy old box. Look in this box. This is full of Victorian bottles. And you're teaching about Victorians, aren't you? And she went, And I said, look, you know what you could do? You could, the children, they could be like archaeologists. They could clean them up. And you could read the writing on the bottles, and you could see what was inside them. And then I left it with her. And a couple of days later, she came to me and she said, I've been thinking about those Victorian bottles. I'm going to do it. And I said, great. And the day came when she was going to be working with the children. These were 7-year-old children, Children who had been previously very passive, progress had not been achieved in this school for 3 years. It was very much, E-star was where the grading was for this school, which is kind of celebrity status for the lowest you can be. Anyway, the children were there. It was a bright sunny morning, and she'd got bowls of soapy water and toothbrushes, and the children started to clean these bottles. And the excitement in the room was absolutely palpable. And I went and stood in other people's classrooms. I said, go and see what's happening in year 2. Because it was electric. What was happening in year 2 was that children couldn't help themselves but be excited about their learning. And it was open-ended. Do you know, one of the bottles in the box even still had the stopper in it, and there was liquid in there, but nobody took the stopper off, nobody drank it, and nobody died. So we carried on. This was the beginning of bringing the school back to life. I was appointed in the January. We came off special measures in the October. The following year, we were in the top 100 most improved schools. We subsequently became outstanding within that first 3 years, and we've been outstanding ever since. And the reason I tell you this is because it was an alternative approach to school improvement. This wasn't an approach that was about going in and checking up on teachers. It wasn't a deficit model. This was a model of hope. It continues to be a model of hope. Children in our school achieve amazing things, as they do in all of your schools. But there's one particular story I want to share with you about a child called Myles. Now, Myles, the first time I saw him, he was 3 years old. He'd been taken into emergency foster care. And his foster mum brought him over to the school, and she was tightly holding his hand, and she said to me, Mrs. Peacock, are there any places in your school in nursery? Because Myles has come to live with me, and he's been in very difficult circumstances, and he hasn't played with other children, and I really would love him to come to your nursery when there's a space. And as she was talking to me, we went and stood in the nursery. And Myles kind of broke away from her hand, and he kind of walked like this across to the open door where the outdoor of the nursery was, where there were the toy cars and all the things you would expect to see in a foundation stage garden. And as he looked round, you know that expression, a child in a sweet shop? He was just like, and he went over to one of those cars with the child sitting in, and he leant in and he just stroked the hair of the little boy that was in the car. And the boy kind of looked like this and got out. And Myles dived in head first. He came out of there, and then he kind of went across, and he saw there was a playhouse, straight in through the door like this. And I said to his foster mum, we'll bring him in now. Now, this is an example of breaking the rules, and I don't care. At that time, you weren't supposed to bring children in early into nursery, but here was a child who needed to be with other children, who'd had a terrible start in life, with a foster mum who clearly cared. So he started in our nursery. And then the following year, he had the full year of nursery, and then he went into our reception class. He had lots of obsessive sort of behaviours. He loved to play with hair. He was still mouthing things. He learned to talk, but he was quite echolalic in his speech. And by the time he was in reception, our reception class is a sort of thoroughfare that goes through into the next classroom. He developed this kind of ritual behaviours whereby any adult who walked through the classroom, he needed to stop them and ask them a series of questions. And they were always about your mummy. Where is your mummy? Is your mummy okay today? So even when we had a visit from the Chief Inspector of Schools, Christine Gilbert, she had to answer where her mummy was before she was allowed to go through the classroom. But by the time he got to the end of reception, although he had been very interested in books and he was learning to speak and so on and so forth, the reception team and the educational psychologist, everybody else said he needs to go to special school. So he left us and went to special school. At the beginning of year 5, the phone rang. Hello, Mrs. Peacock, this is the special school. We think Myles is ready to come back now. Now, I've described to you, I'm a Learning Without Limits teacher, a teacher who believes in trust, co-agency, inclusion, a teacher that believes that every child should surprise us. What did I say on the phone when the special school phoned up? Oh, no, I don't think so. Really? Myles? Because I'd got the Myles in my head that was playing with his hair and playing with his saliva. I thought, no. But he came back to us. Myles came back into our Year 5 class. We are not a school that ranks. We are not a school that groups by ability. Some of the children remembered him. He was welcomed back. He began to flourish. He'd been very well taught in his special school. The beginning of Year 6, he went on school journey. He took part in the school play at the end of Year 6. And when we got his SATs results, he achieved level 5s across the board. Now, the point is, I didn't know he was going to be able to do that. And for all that I was saying as a teacher that I wanted to believe in every child, keeping the door open for every child means exactly that. And children like Myles, it seems to me, are children that teach us all a lesson. I saw his foster mum, now his adoptive mum, just the other day, and she said he is absolutely flourishing in secondary school. So for the sake of Myles, for the sake of all of the children like Myles, we need to believe in learning without limits, not labelling, not limiting, keeping the door open, having the highest aspiration for every single child. Thank you.